Hello. So for this week, work on Etude 17, 1-7 in the Kayser. So this has a few things I wanted to explain to get you started. First, this is a little thing. If you look, every measure in this has these 4 dots all in a line up and down, like halfway through the measure. And this hasn't shown up, as far as I know, in anything we've done already. This is not a super common thing, but it shows up every once in a while. It's basically helping you in your mind understand the rhythm, the number of beats per measure in a particular way. So if you look, this one is in 5-4. The top number 5 means 5 beats per measure, and 4, the bottom number, means your quarter note is a beat. So every measure has 5 beats. And 5 is a weird number to count to in music. It doesn't feel like as natural as 3 and 4. Like if I count 3, I think that's the most natural. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Feels very comfortable. And that's most of dance music is in 3. And then 4, also pretty comfortable. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But if I count 5, this one I don't know the conducting pattern, so I'm not going to try, but it feels very weird. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a little bit more weird. So often whenever we have things that have weird numbers, instead of thinking always to 5 beats in a measure, we kind of think of a pattern of 3 beats and then 2 beats. So almost as if every measure was 2 measures with different numbers of beats that combine to 5. So the first measure, for example, we have 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2. So together it's 5, but we kind of think of them as 3 and 2. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. It's a little weird, but that's basically what the dots mean. They mean think of the measure as a measure of 3 beats and a measure of 2 beats instead of counting all the way to 5. So when you're playing, the vertical dots don't mean anything about what you do with your instrument or the rhythm or the pitch. They're more helping you find a groove for the meter, the 5-4. Okay, now for this etude, there's kind of 2 characters, 2 different types of sounds you'll hear throughout this. There's the one you'll hear in the first 2 lines, which is very sweet and sing-songy and elegant and beautiful. Kind of reminds me of like a Disney princess singing to the birds. It's that kind of a sound. And then there's another character that shows up in the 3rd line, the second measure of the 3rd line. It says forte risoluto and has all these dots. This character sounds much more like insistent, or maybe a little angry or stern, something like that. A very different kind of feeling. So first big goal is to make these 2 characters sound like polar opposites, totally different from each other. And to do that, we have to pay attention to how we're using our bow. So for the first character, there's this bowing pattern and rhythm pattern as well that shows up. You have a slur that has a half note and a triplet, and underneath it is a decrescendo. And then you have 2 up bow quarter notes afterwards. And this pattern repeats itself a lot through this piece. So if I was to interpret all of those decrescendos as every measure just gets softer and softer and softer, it's not going to work. There's too many of them in a row to continue getting softer. Eventually your violin's not going to be making sound anymore, or it's not going to be a very beautiful sound because it's way too light. So instead, this kind of a thing where you see a decrescendo over and over and over, it has to do more with where you're sustaining and not sustaining the sound. So this is actually a lot like what we're working on in the Bach with those quarter notes. So every time you get this slur with the decrescendo, I want you to think of starting your bow fast and heavy and then releasing it to light and slow. So this kind of a thing. Okay, So if I put it with the first notes, it'll sound like this. Beautiful like that. I think I liked my second one even better. Okay, now the up bows, to get these to work, we have two goals we need to achieve. One, we don't want them to be louder than where your decrescendo ended. We don't want them to suddenly be really loud and sound accented. If I did that, it'd sound like this. It's not a bad sound, but it sounds a little weird to have them be suddenly really loud. So we want them to be elegant and fit in, but we also need to get back to the frog, because the next measure we're going to have to do that same decrescendo down bow situation. So the way that I achieve those two things is I start my first up bow at the tip on the string where I ended my down bow, and I'm going to play it with just as much bow as I need to make it sound the right loudness and the right staccato-ness. So not too short, not too long, not too loud, not too soft. It's you're gonna have to listen very carefully to find that balance for yourself. So if I end in this one, that to me sounds like a nice amount of dynamic, maybe a little shorter. I like that one. So I play just that much. And then if I was to do nothing, I'd only get to maybe here with the next note. So instead, I'm in the air, I'm gonna move closer to the frog. So the next one I can play down here with the same approximate amount of bow, so it'll sound the same, but then I ended the frog. So together, like that. Lift. And the second one, be careful to start it from the string. You don't want to attack from above, because then it makes a harsh sound. Okay, so if I put it all together, like that. Okay, the other character shows up in the second bar of the third line, the forte risoluto. And for this, I would use a marcato bow stroke. This music, I think, is just barely slow enough that you can do triplets still marcato. It's a little tricky to do them this fast, but it's still possible. And I think it's going to sound better than a strong spiccato. Later on, if you look on the fifth line, Kayser even recommends doing marcato for this. So I think it's a good place to use that. So I'm going to go to the upper half where it feels comfortable. So your previous measure, when you do your uppos, you might not travel all the way to the frog. That way you're in a good spot for this. This kind of thing. So I'm thinking for marcato, same thing as kind of always. I want to get as much as I can, the same pinch for the start of every note without it getting too harsh. So I don't want, it's a little too much. So just a nice sound, something around there, you know, listen to what sounds best to you and your instrument. And then to give it a little extra of this stern kind of character, I'm thinking of a fast bow after each one. If I do a small bow, it has a good articulation, but it doesn't sound resolute, like you're intent on doing something until it's right, or it's something like that kind of a feeling. So I'm going to use fast bows. Something like that. The last little thing to look at, if you look down at the second to the last line, the last full measure. So second to the last line, last measure. It starts, and then you have this forzando on this up bow. This forzando is kind of tricky to do. You have to work really hard to get the sound. So here's what I suggest for this kind of a thing. A forzando I think of as similar to an accent, but not articulate like an accent. So articulate meaning the start of the note is not as sharp. So it's emphasized, but not in a sharp way. So instead, what I think is after I start my bow, I'm going to very quickly add a burst of bow speed to it. This kind of thing. So I'm not doing a sharp start. I'm starting, if I do it like really, really slow motion, I start normal, and then I add in bow speed and maybe a little wing. But that all happens very quickly. Like this. Okay? So you're going to have to work very hard on those up bows to get the forzados to happen. But otherwise, you have just kind of these two characters. You'll go in a few different dynamics throughout and get to tell kind of a interesting story of two people having some sort of a discussion or something. Let me know if you have any questions on it, and happy practicing.